Here's a question. What do you do if you can't afford a big, fast, practical wagon like the Audi RS6 or the Mercedes E63? I'll tell you what you do. You shop smart and you get the next best thing. And this might be it. The brand new Mercedes-AMG C43 Estate.
This one is based on the latest generation C-Class, in this case the £65,000 wagon, which means a long roof and loads of space in the back. Not to mention an extensive technology upgrade with a tablet screen, displays on the steering wheel and flashy ambient lights. To complete the package, all this AMG needs now is a half-decent engine. Does it have one?
No, it does not. At least it doesn't on paper. You see, the previous generation C43 used a 3-litre V6, and even that was a bit of a disappointment, mainly because it wasn't a V8. This new one uses a 2-litre 4-cylinder. So if you're thinking, well, that's a waste of time, well, actually, it isn't. The engine might be small, but it is properly mighty. It's basically the same engine that they use in the A45S, and that means big power. In this case, 408 PS. 0 to 62 in the saloon takes 4.6 seconds. In the estate, 4.7. Flat out, 165 miles an hour. The engine in the A45S actually has 420 PS, so around 12 more than this, which is a bit of a shame. You never really want a smaller, less expensive car to have more power than a bigger, more expensive one. But on the move, they both have 500 Newton meters of torque, and trust me, it feels quick.
And that's down to the C43's fancy turbocharger. Where most cars use a conventional turbo that relies on exhaust gas pressure to spin up, compress air in the engine and allow for a bigger spark and more power, this engine uses an electric turbo.
With a normal turbo, you have to be accelerating, the engine has to be revving, and the exhaust has to be breathing in order for that turbo to be spinning up, hence turbo lag. In this system, the electric motor spins the turbo up to 175,000 RPM, so even if you're lifting off through a corner, as I am now, when you get back on it, the engine's already on boost, so it feels super responsive. It's basically the same turbo technology they use in the Mercedes-AMG F1 cars, so when you buy a C43, you're basically Lewis Hamilton.
There's another cool addition too, a belt-driven starter generator that can add a further 13 horsepower at low revs for yet more responsiveness. But that's not the only trick up the C43's sleeve.
Right, have a look at this. The C43 has rear wheel steering. In other words, when I turn the front wheels to the left, the rear wheels turn to the right. Turn the front wheels to the right, the rear wheels turn to the left. Only by around 2.5 degrees, but it is quite noticeable. And what it means is that the car has a far smaller turning circle and is more maneuverable. At higher speeds, the rear wheels turn in the same direction as the fronts for more stability. Clever. There's another big advantage that the C43 has over the standard C-Class, and one of those you might be able to hear. It's the engine noise. It's surprisingly fruity. It's got quite a lot of character to it, more than I expected. On the outside, it's a little bit antisocial. Unfortunately, on the inside, it's a bit less impressive. It uses an optional system called AMG Real Performance Sound, which apparently has a sensor on the exhaust which can detect when the car is making a noise, and it can divert some of that noise into the cabin. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound real. It sounds a little bit artificial. It's too quiet, and the pops and bangs, well, they don't really sound like pops and bangs to me. They sound like a woodpecker somewhere in the distance, delicately headbutting a tree. Nah.
So it sounds the part, kinda, but does it look the part? Well, if you're a fan of estates, then yes. It has an elegant, well-proportioned design, especially when fitted with these optional 20-inch alloys. The front features Merc's Panamericana grille, some nice flicks on the lower bumper, and gloss black skirts on the side, while around the back, Arguably this car's best angle, it's muscular and broad-shouldered with a rear diffuser and, shock horror, a set of real quad exhaust pipes.
I'm a big fan of what they've done with the interior in the new C-Class. I mean, look at it. It's absolutely gorgeous. Merc, definitely on top of your game, particularly with these vents, which look great. They've got some red backlighting going on in there, and the way the vents move and sound, that's just really satisfying, isn't it? The steering wheel is also fantastic. A lot of girth, which you know I like. It's a bit complicated to use because it does have a lot of touch-sensitive elements. Up here on the top left, that's for controlling your driver display. This one is for controlling the main touchscreen. The bottom left is for your cruise control, and the bottom right is for your media playback. And then you've got these controls down here, these miniature screens for controlling your drivetrain setup. And speaking of screens, you've got this enormous iPad-style display in the middle, which does look a bit intimidating the first time you lay your eyes on it, but it's actually quite easy to use. You've got a nice big home button in the middle, and that gives you access to all your main functions. And even though the aircon and heating is integrated in the screen, they're always on the bottom layer, so they're fairly easy to use. And it does have some physical controls as well, all the way across the bottom, which lets you control your volume and your car settings fairly easily. There's a fly in here. Okay, he's gone. I can tell you about the practicality now. Down here in the center console, you've got 2 cup holders, which are adjustable in size for various different cup sizes, wireless charging, decent space in the middle for your bits and bobs, and decent sized door bins as well. It's good in here. I like it.
And practicality is good. Being an estate, the C43 has good space for luggage, 500 litres to be precise, and seats that fold down to provide even more. It's positive news for rear passengers too, with good headroom and decent legroom. The center console, which does look a bit like a face, has some nice vents and 2 USB ports, but the build quality of the buttons in our test car left a bit to be desired. Not that you should be worried too much, as children will only destroy this stuff with their feet anyway.
So, what is the C43 like when you're not on a flowing B road enjoying the performance? Well, it's actually pretty good in terms of refinement and quietness. It's not too bad, but there are a couple of caveats to that. First of all, these Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres do make a little bit more road noise than I'd like. And also, these swanky looking vents up here might look amazing, but when you turn the heating up, even on level 1, they make far too much noise. So you end up having to make a choice between being really hot or going deaf. As for these seats, they might look quite aggressive and sporty, but very comfortable. I've spent the better part of 4 hours in here so far today, and I've got no complaints about that whatsoever. On the whole, it's quite a user-friendly car, very simple to drive. The rear-wheel steering makes it very maneuverable around town. It's easy to park. The gearbox is a delight. It's the same 9-speed unit you get on the E63S, and it's very fast and snappy. When you're driving hard, you get a huge recoil through the car and feel every single gear change. It's very, very involving, but when you're out here cruising around, apart from at really low speeds, it's generally quite smooth. The car's also got some very clever gadgets, including this incredible augmented reality satellite navigation system, which overlays graphics on the screen to show you exactly where to turn. It's all very clever.
More to the point, because it's an AMG, it's also very fun. It does the boring stuff well, and when you want to have a good time, it'll happily indulge in that too.
Genuinely, this is a hilarious car to drive, honestly. It's so much fun. If I had one gripe, it's that it doesn't have the AMG 4MATIC Plus all-wheel drive system. It has the standard 4MATIC system, which means it can't send all of the power to the rear wheels, which means no drift mode. And we all know how I feel about AMGs that don't have drift mode. Not for me. Having said that though, the rear wheel steer more than makes up for it. You turn in and it's so direct and it flows so nicely through the corners. It really is a joy to drive. I don't remember the old C43 being this good. This thing is a bit of a triumph.
Of course, it won't come cheap. It'll set you back £65,000, but that's 15 grand less than the E63 and 20 grand cheaper than an RS6. It's not as fast or as flashy as either of those, but this baby AMG definitely punches above its weight.
On the whole, I am a big fan of the new C43, particularly because of what they've done with the engineering, which is excellent, and the interior design, which for me is almost spot on. Of course, it doesn't move the game as far forward on paper as I might have liked, but for me, this is a better all-round car than the model it replaces. It's not perfect, of course. I don't like the fact it's slower than an A45, and the noises it makes are a little bit cartoonish. So is it a budget Audi RS6 or a baby E63? Not quite, but it's not far off.